Yeah, thanks for coming to the session. Today I'm going to talk about data discovery. What is data discovery? Why is it important? And what should you look out for if you want to build and implement data discovery for your company? I guess you could have guessed by the presentation, but SelectStar is a company focused on automated data discovery. So with that, let's get started. First and foremost, I wanted to talk about why data discovery is starting to get really important in the industry and for every organization. First and foremost, there is an explosion of data that's happening in every organization. Whether that the data is in S3, Postgres, MySQL, or the data coming directly from your SaaS applications like Salesforce, Zora, you name it. There's definitely the large volumes of data that we are all dealing with at the same time. The bigger problem, I would say, is the disparate sources of data that now you have to put it into one place in order to actually make sense out of that data. So today, a lot of companies are moving to implementing a data lake, data warehouses. So you have a single source of truth where you can join different data sets and also do true 360 analysis about your customer, about your business, and truly understand what's really happening underneath your business operations. At the same time, having this data warehouse, data lakes implemented, you're going to now end up with hundreds and thousands of tables, dashboards, and different analysis all in one place. So how do you really sift through this amount of variety of data? And how do you ensure that not just you, but everyone else inside the company can really truly understand and find what they're looking for? The next challenge that a lot of companies also face is this decentralization of data ownership. Because the data is created from different domain-driven applications, and it may not be always truly formatted or prepped, but it is still useful for that specific domain. Now, instead of having a centralized data analytics team, a lot of companies do have embedded data analysts and organizations in their own domain functions, in its sales, operations, HR, customer success. And this allows different different domain teams to be able to make business decisions based on data faster. At the same time, you may have different KPIs and metrics that different divisions measure on, but they are called the same. So I may have a definition of active users as a product group here. At the same time, there may be an active user that's defined differently in a customer success group. So there is a disparate understanding and definitions of these high-level core KPIs that companies are trying to measure on. And with the decentralization of data, making sure that everyone's on the same page is becoming harder. And last but not least, there is also a democratization of data access. Business stakeholders are not just getting email reports anymore. They do have access directly to their data warehouses through BI tools like Tableau, Looker, Power BI. They can find the different analysis that's been done and also add their own quote-unquote queries by putting filters in or dragging and drop different fields to see what's really happening underneath the high-level data. And what this means is that it's important to be able to ensure that everyone also has a at least bare amount of knowledge of how the data glossaries and terms are really defined and where they can really find those assets or analysis that's been already done. So what all these three industry trend that we see that revolves in is that it's not just the data team or data scientist, it's your general manager, your financial analyst, or marketing analyst asking the question of where is this data? How was this calculated? And why does my number look like this? So this is starting to become a more bigger challenge for a lot of organizations today. In the past, it's been more of a problem for very large enterprises with many different data sources. Today, many companies with cloud data warehouse, cloud lake situation is starting to face this problem because you want to ensure you're democratizing data and allowing your business teams to make data-driven decisions faster. At the same time, you also need to make sure that everyone's using the correct data in the right way. So in order to solve this problem, here are some of the existing ways to solve the problem. First and foremost, the data team can start putting together documentation about what's the business process like and what are these table definition or column definition. This can happen in your Confluence or Notion doc or spreadsheets. We've seen many different forms of this. And this is a great place to start, especially when your data size and your data models are smaller. At the same time, as your company grows, and for a large company, this is really not really possible because the manual documentation just cannot keep up with the pace of how fast data pipelines and analysis are being created in different parts of the organization. On top of that, as companies grow, so companies, especially with dedicated data engineering teams and platform teams, they will start considering utilizing some open source solutions like Apache Atlas or Data Hub or Amundsen. And these are great projects to get started with, but more focused on data engineering side. So it will help you to get some metadata into one place. At the same time, what we found is that actually implementing the full data catalog and having that to be used by the rest of the company, it just takes a lot longer time to productionize that project as well as adding enough business context for everyone to be familiar with. Last but not least, there are also proprietary solutions that's been in the market for a long time, called usually Enterprise Data Catalog from companies like IBM, Informatica, TIBCO, you name it. These catalogs have been around since the database has been around. At the same time, a lot of these solutions are currently designed with very much of an on-prem environment with very I would say manual ways to define your workflows and the sources that you're adding. And what that means is that you will need to implement and have a dedicated data governance team to configure the platform and then create workflows and all the rules in order for making the platform to be productive. So we usually hear also about 9 to 12 months of implementation time. And a lot of these tools are actually still primarily designed for database administrators and more technical users, and is not necessarily being focused on end users of your data analysts, data scientists, as well as other citizen data scientists in your organizations that are consuming the data. So the problems that we wanted to solve and the parts that we are starting to see as a bigger problem around data discovery, we see that there are core parts of data discovery that everyone needs to have. First and foremost, to have the data discovery to be the single source of truth of data in your organization, you should be able to find and understand data that you have in your data stack. And having a universal search for every single data stack that you have, and on top of that, having a better context around that data, like where it came from, how it's being used, is all very important. And on top of that, data discovery platforms like SelectStar will provide a way to easily add documentation, have a way to collaborate with each other, adding comments and asking questions, and last but not least, allowing you to give you the control to govern the data, managing access, defining owners, and defining workflows. So with that, with the interest of time, I don't have a full product demo, but I do have some screenshots to walk you through to help you understand what it would look like by implementing all these aspects of data discovery. So first and foremost, this is like an example of a table page where you'll be able to see what is this data about. So having a description of the table, whether it's being automatically imported from your CSV files or data warehouse comments or any other docs is something that we see as a really one part that's important. But on top of that, there are other automated operational information that you can gather. For example, you can add an ownership to be assigned. And what's the popularity? How many people and how often is this data being queried in your organization? How big is the table? And when's the last time this was refreshed? Having this information allows you to build trust in data so that you know that this is a data set that everyone's using, not something that somebody has duplicated from the core database and that looks exactly the same as what you were expecting. And on top of that, not just on the table level, but also having the popularity score on the column level will be also helpful. A lot of denormalized database tables now have hundreds of columns that you're dealing with. So which specific customer name or which version of the order ID should I really use? That is where the column-specific usage model will tell you, like with the popularity score here. And on top of that, as data analysts and data consumers start looking into how I can use this table or how I can use this data set overall, another part that you would want to consider having is example queries and popular queries and joins. So you can have a direct example of how the data can be joined with other data sets and where else this data has been used for other analysis in the past. And last but not least, you should also consider looking into who's using this data set the most to find out if you have any specific questions about this data context. So these are kind of like the baseline information that we always recommend our customers look into. Second of all, this is an example of a database page. You would want to have also a high-level bird's-eye view of which are the tables that are being used the most versus not, so that you know which tables to promote, document, and assign ownership versus deprecate those data sets because they are not really being used anymore and they are just taking up the storage and also making it more confusing for the data consumers to find. So here I'm also showing this quote-unquote downstream. What this shows is in terms of data lineage with the data pipeline, what are the assets that will get impacted if your table is deprecated. So here you can see that there are 43 dashboards, 17 tables that will get impacted if I were to deprecate orders table. This type of information, along with popularity, will give you a more understanding before you make any changes to your data warehouse or in your production databases. Going further, this is an example of a column-level lineage that Select-Star provides to our customers. A lot of customers use column-level lineage in two ways. First and foremost, whenever the data consumers are wondering about where did this data come from, how did we calculate this dashboard, what are the data sets are we using, this is an easy way to find out, all the way to the upstream of how your data model is created. And the second other use case, which we see also is very popular, is for the data engineering team, platform team, and also when they are working with the production data team, for them to make sure that if anyone's going to change on the data pipeline or the upstream data, they can make sure that there are 5 different dashboards that's going to be broken. Here are the other data models that's going to get impacted. Having this column level lineage up front so that it covers all your data models is super helpful in terms of the lineage perspective. So if lineage is showing you what's happening in your data pipeline, another part that can also be considered is having an automated entity relationship diagram. Usually ER diagrams is created by data architects as a blueprint to start designing your data models. At the same time, we know that it never gets updated as your data gets added. So what we've created was to pull how the joins are happening and then give you an indication of these must be the foreign keys, and these are the ways that data is currently being joined, so that you don't have to manually update your documentation and diagrams all the time. And these are some of the customers that we are working with today, from Fortune 500s as well as a very fast-growing digital native companies. And because now I have only 3 seconds left, these are some of the things that I would like you to take away from my from my talk. What are the aspects that you should consider when you are thinking about getting a data discovery tool? You want to make sure that things are actually automated so that you don't have to build all the configuration manually. You want to make sure that you want to have analytics that's built from your metadata and the logs that's defined by the tool. And you want to also make sure that it's very easy to use, not just for the technical users, but for everyone else that is considered as a data consumer. And these are the only ways to really make sure that your data discovery becomes that system of record for everyone to be used and also be productive with their data. Thank you so much for coming to my talk today. Happy to answer any questions. I'll be right over here.